Good afternoon. This is Melissa Gopnik with Commonwealth. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to give people just 1 or 2 more minutes to join us. We're expecting a few more people, and then we will get going. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Gopnik. I'm the Senior Vice President here at Commonwealth, and I will be the moderator for this afternoon's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar on the July 1 minimum wage increase in Minneapolis, tips and tools for implementation. A couple of logistics to start with. If you are a tweeter, please tweet with the hashtag MPLS wage hike. We will be tweeting throughout this webinar. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them throughout the webinar. You should see a chat box that says questions. Feel free to enter them there. There also will be lots of opportunities and breaks throughout the webinar where we will be specifically asking for questions. But if things come up along the way, feel free to ask them. And I will either answer them or will tell you that I will find an answer and answer them after the webinar. Today, there will be 3 speakers on this webinar. First, Brian Walsh, the supervisor of the Labor Standards Enforcement Division, will be speaking. I will then speak, Melissa Gopnik, and then Amylin Clark from Prepare and Prosper. Our agenda for this webinar is first this introduction, which is what I'm doing right now. Brian will be speaking about the new wage ordinance. I will then be speaking about employee financial security and how employers can help build that financial security and why they should. And then Ann will be talking about the local Minneapolis resources that are available through Prepare and Prosper. And then, as I've said, there will both be a question and answer period at the very end of the webinar, as well as in between each of our sections. With no further ado, I'm going to pass the baton on to Brian to talk about the specifics of the Minneapolis minimum wage ordinance. Brian.
Thank you, Melissa, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Walsh. I am the supervisor of the Labor Standards Enforcement Division in the City of Minneapolis Department of Civil Rights. We're coming to you today, as Melissa noted, just a few days before July 1st, which is an important date because it marks a rise in the Minneapolis minimum wage and really for the first time will be felt broadly across our community. And I am mindful of really the huge impact that this law has in our city. A little bit of background about me. I'm an employment law attorney. I've been working in the Civil Rights Department for 6 years. I'm going to start off this webinar by just setting a little bit of the historical context and a flavor of the actual requirements. What are the nuts and bolts of this minimum wage law? But then the rest of the time, we really want to focus attention and give a lot of time for my colleagues, both from Commonwealth and from Prepare and Prosper, to start to shift the focus of our conversation, not so much on the pros and cons of the policy, whether any of us like it or not, good, bad, or otherwise. This is now the law in the city of Minneapolis. And I would really like to start to talk a, more about how you business owners can start to maximize or think about maximizing any potential benefits for your business. And I apologize. Oh, there we go. I had a little lag as I'm forwarding the slides. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is just set a little bit of the historical context. How did we get here? Where did this come from? The dark blue line you can see on the slide there is productivity across the entire economy throughout the last, what is that, well, 70 or 80 years. You'll see something happened around the year 1973, where previously our average hourly wages for hourly workers rose sort of in lockstep with productivity across the entire economy. Then something happened from about 1973 to present, as the entire economy continued to grow and we have produced overall more, hourly workers have not been feeling or seeing the same benefits that they were previous to that time. So, as a historical matter, wage stagnation is real for hourly workers, and that led really to a lot of what you're seeing in recent times in the national conversation, and certainly here in the city of Minneapolis, where you have a ton of popular support for things like raising a minimum wage, or in our case, enacting a municipal minimum wage. And Melissa, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble advancing the slides. There we go. So that really big context is really what tells the story of how it is that there you see the picture of then Mayor Betsy Hodges signing this minimum wage ordinance into law. There was a really just an overwhelming amount of community support that really pushed the issue very hard and didn't, in a lot of ways, didn't give policymakers in the city of Minneapolis a lot of choice. I think one of the arguments that ruled the day, certainly for our elected officials here in the city, and Melissa, if you could advance my slide again, I apologize, is this statistic here and this fact. As of the time of signing this ordinance into law, 41% of all African American workers across the entire city of Minneapolis earned less than $15 an hour. 54% of all Latino workers across the city versus only 17% of all white workers. I think that really carried the day in the very long policy debate that unfolded here locally. So that's sort of the context, and that kind of sets the stage for how we got where we are. And where are we now? Melissa, if you could advance my slide. There we go. We are sitting on the precipice of July 1st, 2018, and as you can see, the minimum wage for employers with 100 or fewer employees will be $10.25 effective July 1st. That's Sunday, 2018. For large employers, that minimum wage will rise to $11.25. And Melissa, if you could advance, there we go. This illustrates that exact same information in another way. It also makes the point that this minimum wage, in a lot of the public discourse, there's a focus on the number 15, and there's a sort of slogans around fight for 15. There was an article in the paper today about 15. Really, this wage is not going to stop at 15. a big part of the reason that we're seeing a really sharp increase that you see in that graph there over the next several years is because it did not rise for so long at the state or federal level. It was never tied to inflation. So what we're doing is playing catch up in a lot of ways. And in the year 2024, the minimum wage for both large and small businesses will become one. There will be one wage, and it will be tied to inflation, rise on a yearly basis to account for inflation. And those inflationary increases will be the same as they are for the state of Minnesota minimum wage. Some of the fine print in our minimum wage. What exactly is in here? How exactly does it work? Records that must be kept. I think the important thing to note here is this is essentially the exact same thing as Minnesota law. So what employers are required to track, to account for, is the same as they have been doing or currently must do under Minnesota law. A small employer, large employer. As I just noted in the two previous slides, there's a big difference in the next several years on what the wage is and the number 100. It's 100 employees, and those are 100 humans on your payroll. It's not FTEs. That's an important note. It is and that is defined as the weekly average in the previous January through December calendar year. For most employers, this is not a question you know whether you are above 100 or below 100 because you're not near that line, and you don't need to worry about what that calculation is. But there certainly are some employers that might hover around that line. They're near that line, or they fluctuate depending upon the season, and you're going to want to pay attention to how that calculation is made. Please contact me or go to the website to make sure that you're getting that number right. The last note on this slide is tips. Tips do not count towards payment of a minimum wage in the city of Minneapolis. Another thing not on the slide here, thank you for advancing it. Another thing not on the slide, but I wanted to mention, is a training wage. Different from state law, there is a training wage in this municipal minimum wage, but it only applies to city-approved youth mentorship programs. There is a list and an application to explain what that means on the city's minimum wage website. Please refer there for further information. Who exactly does this apply to? So this is a city of Minneapolis law, obviously. Who does it apply to? It applies based on the location of the employee. And any employee that works at least 2 hours in a week for the time that employee is performing work within the city boundaries of the city of Minneapolis, the Minneapolis minimum wage ordinance applies to those hours worked, regardless of the location of the employer. Again, in the vast majority of circumstances, this is not going to be an issue for the shop that's located wholly within the city and does all of its work in the city and has all of its employees in the city. This is not something that you need to spend your time thinking about. This really is for the occasional employees that come in and out of the city for a variety of reasons. That this is the threshold that triggers the ordinance, 2 hours per week. At this point, Melissa, I want to stop and pause to see if we have any questions on what I have addressed thus far. And if there's not, I can certainly take questions at the end. Of course, please reach out to me directly. Go to our Minneapolis minimum wage website at minimumwage.minneapolismn.org. minwage.gov, or here in the city of Minneapolis, you can email minwage@minneapolismn.gov or call 311 to be connected to the Department of Civil Rights. With that, I'm going to pass the baton on back to Melissa.
Thanks so much, Brian. We have a couple of questions. We have one question from John. What about staffing firms? How does this minimum wage increase impact staffing firms?
Sure. So the short answer is that the Minneapolis minimum wage applies to a temporary employee the same way it applies to any other employee. So, the employee must be paid at least the minimum wage rate if they are performing work within the city of Minneapolis for at least 2 hours in a week. So someone who is working their entire shift at a client employer within the city, even if the temp agency is located outside the city, because that person is performing work within the city, then the Minneapolis minimum wage applies to that person.
And John actually had an add-on question, which is, does the number of employees go off the number of employees at the staffing firm, or is it the number of employees at where they are staffed to, so the place they end up working at? Or is it if the staffing firm itself has more than the 100 employees?
Sure, and I would encourage this question, the person who has this question, to contact me directly offline so that we can get a little deeper into the weeds. But the question of staffing, temporary agencies and staffing firms can get really complicated really quickly. And the legal question is, who is the employer? And typically, it's going to be the staffing agency. And so the 100 employee threshold is going to be looking at that staffing agency, unless the client has effectively become the employer, and that's a legal distinction that it's very fact specific. So please contact me for further information. But in general, assuming that the staffing firm or the temp agency is the employer, then we're going to be counting the number of employees at that staffing firm.
Great. A couple more questions. If an employee is working on June 30th at midnight, starts her shift at 11 and goes from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., does some of that time, does their wage shift right at the strike of midnight until June 30th?
Yeah, I have not heard that question yet. That's a good one. And technically speaking, yes. I mean, yes, the law is written the way it is, and it says very clearly July 1st, that will start at midnight. So technically speaking, if an employer wanted to pay until midnight, and change the wage right at that line, that is what the law requires.
Great. Thank you, Joanna, for the question. And then one last question from Deborah. If an employer is outside of Minneapolis, but they come into the city on occasion to take a client to a doctor's appointment or something like that, but they only transport people into the city and then back out, does that person who's transporting people within the city need to be paid at the new Minneapolis minimum wage?
Yeah, this is another really good question. I encourage the questioner to contact me directly so that we can talk about the specific facts in their particular case. But as a general matter, if an employee is driving through the city without making any work-related stops, so they're just going from point A to point B, then they haven't worked within the city. But I believe what the questioner is saying is, well, what if they're coming in the city, their job is driving, it might be delivery, it might be bringing people back and forth, it might be packages, etc. If they're stopping in the city for to perform their work, and in this example, it would be to bring the people to a location in the city, then the time in which they are in the city is does trigger, assuming that they reach the threshold of 2 hours in a week, then that's when, yes, that time is counted towards the Minneapolis minimum wage. Now, does the Department of Civil Rights expect you to be standing at the border of Minneapolis and St. Paul with a stopwatch? No, absolutely not. Please understand that to calculate time spent in the city, as long as an employer is using a reasonable, good faith basis to do so, and that may be estimates based on historical averages or delivery addresses, or the route that the employee took, or there can be different ways to calculate that. As long as you can explain how you got to that number and it makes sense, it's reasonable, then that's going to be what the law requires you to do.
Great, thank you so much. So I think we're going to shift gears here, and again, there'll be lots more time at the end for questions, and all of our emails will be made available at the end of the webinar as well. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of your employees' financial security and the impact it has on your business, and how the moment of this raise might be a real opportunity to have a win-win for you and your employees. So as I say, I'm a senior vice president at Commonwealth. We are a national nonprofit organization committed to building solutions to make people financially secure. We are currently working with employers across the country to support them in using the moment of a raise, either the minimum wage hike or just a raise in general, to improve their business by supporting workers to use the raise to build the workers' financial security. I want to start off by asking all of you a question. So have you seen any impact on your business when your employees have personal financial challenges? And if so, in what way? So you can answer the poll question, and then in the question box, give me some examples of how you have seen your employees' personal financial challenges impact your business. I'll give you a few minutes to answer this poll. So as you can see, we have around half of you have said, yes, you actually have seen the impacts of your employees' financial insecurity in your workplace. Some impacts include stress levels that impact performance at work. An employee who works 2 jobs because they have to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, and their schedules conflict. Or that they only want to work the job that pays slightly more so that they get more income. Great examples. And I think what this shows, and I think this is what we see when we look across the country, is that employees' financial insecurity does have a direct impact on your business. And I think around a third of you have said you don't know, and that's probably right, because many employees will choose not to share their personal financial challenges in the workplace. So you may not know that is what's causing perhaps some productivity issues in the workplace. And so all of the research kind of points to 4 common impacts. First, productivity. That almost 40% of employees with financial concerns spend at least 3 hours dealing with their financial problems while they should be at work. They also have higher rates of missing work and absenteeism. They also have higher turnover rates, which I'm sure many of you have experienced. And one study found that the cost to replace an $8 an hour employee can be as much as $3,500 $100. I think this is especially challenging these days with the increasingly tight labor market, and I understand this is a significant issue in Minneapolis as well, that there are fewer and fewer workers to go around. And finally, what the researchers talk is about cognitive overload. If an employee is worrying about how they're going to pay the rent or feed their kids or pay for school supplies, it's going to be really hard for them to be fully present at work and bring their best selves. I'm sure that all of us can relate to those days when we come to work and our mind is half at work and half somewhere else. And we just no human being can do their best work in that situation. We've asked employees what would happen if you felt more financially secure. And 40% said they believe that increased financial security would improve their productivity at work. And 25% said that it would increase their attendance at work. And this is a survey we did specifically of lower wage workers that Commonwealth did. We also asked them if an employer offered a program to help you improve your financial situation, would that make you want to stay at this job? And 84% said that it likely would, that they would be more likely to stay at their job if, in fact, they felt like their employer was helping them be more financially secure. We also asked them what are their top financial concerns, knowing that many employers may not know kind of the specifics of their lives of their employees. And as you can see, almost half picked saving for emergencies as a top concern for them. And this is not different than many other Americans. The Federal Reserve Bank has a stat that around 40% of Americans don't have $400 in emergency savings. So what can you do about this? Right? We've spent the last 18 months working with employers and their employees to come up with some simple and inexpensive and yet effective things you can do. And we have boiled it down to two main things: messaging about the raise and making it easy for your employees to save for that emergency. I'm going to go through and give some really practical tips and tools here. And also we have 4 handouts that are available through the webinar that are things you can download and use yourself. So the first thing is what we're calling a raise impact estimate tool. Oftentimes we've heard from workers that it feels like it's a really small raise if they're getting, let's say, 50 cents or $1 an hour extra. That may not feel like much. And what we found is if in fact we put it in frames of a week or a month or even a year, that has a much bigger impact in terms of employees believing that the raise will actually make a difference in their lives. The other thing that we have found is making raises about the here and the now is incredibly important. This is why oftentimes retirement savings doesn't really work for lower wage workers because it's too far in their future. If you're worried about both paying your cell phone bill, your utility bill, and your rent, really hard to think about 30, 40 years down the road. So tying savings suggestions to specific concrete everyday expenses is incredibly important. One way you can do that is here, for example, is a worksheet where it talks about specific things people may be thinking about: their car, back to school, cell phone bills. Cell phones are a key component. And again, on this piece, again, we repeat how much even small savings can add up pretty quickly. Our third recommendation is to communicate in multiple ways. Simple and clear messaging can be delivered. We've done it with employers via email. We've done it in text messaging, workplace posters, in person at meetings, through pay stubs. And it's important to do it multiple times because we are all bombarded with information all of the time, right? How many times does it take you to get a message before you actually read it and understand it and act on it, if you think about your own personal life? And so we think it's important that things get communicated made it in multiple ways. Here are some examples of some posters that other employers have used at the moment of a minimum wage hike. Again, re-emphasizing the specific goals. You've got goals, make them possible. Life happened, be prepared. So this is really about emergency savings. And this is a workplace that was having a meeting to talk more about this. So that's around messaging. The second main stream that we think is important is talking about savings recommendations. And these, again, are meant to be simple yet effective, not costing you any more money approaches. One is really split direct deposit. The simplest way to make savings easy is by reminding employees about the option of splitting their direct deposit. Or if you pay employees on a payroll card, there's often a savings pocket on the payroll card. And if you're not sure, we're happy to help with that. And we have found in our work that making small edits to what it says on the direct deposit form can make a huge difference. So for example, here's an example of a flyer for workers that talks about how to do direct deposit savings. And on this is a new direct deposit form where you start with the savings account information and you actually have specific amounts. So it's easy as checking off a box. And lots of research has found if you have 3 boxes, the majority of people will pick the middle box. So that's why we suggest having the 3 boxes with a middle amount, and that's what most people will check. These are sample amounts. It depends on how much raises your employees are getting. It could be $1, it could be 3 and 5. It really depends on the amount of raises that your employees are experiencing. And as always, we want to have employees to have choice, so there's always an other. But making this simple change to direct deposit form can have a huge impact, is what we have seen in our research. The other option for savings depends on the benefit package that you are currently offering, because there may be other benefits that they could start using that in some ways act like savings. So health savings accounts, pre-tax commuting benefits, or even retirement for some of your employees. And then finally, one of the biggest obstacles that we have found across the country is that workers often say to us, yes, I want to save, but there are no good saving products that I know of. And one survey, we found that 46% of people did not have a savings account. In Minneapolis, you are incredibly lucky that you have Prepare and Prosper right in your backyard, and the FAIR Project, that is a local resource addressing this issue. So I'm going to pass it on to Anne, but before I do that, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or at the end of the webinar. As I said, many of these research are available for download, and we are also available to do one-on-one consultations whenever people are interested. But I'm going to give people a few minutes to ask any questions. Okay, well, we can come back to this, but I'm now going to.
Okay, Melissa and Brian, thank you. I am Amylin Clark. I'm the Financial Capability and Learning Director here at Prepare and Prosper in Minnesota, and based in St. Paul, Minneapolis area. And today, thank you. So as we sort of led up to this discussion with Brian talking through the implementation of the minimum wage increase and Melissa sharing both the context for and some really plug and play tools and avenues to intervene on financial health. Right now, I'm going to talk about some new work we're doing at Prepare and Prosper to introduce one local solution or program that could be integrated into business processes, such as payroll, employee benefits programs to improve financial health. Bottom line here, I'm going to describe a product that the idea is to decrease stress and improve financial capability and confidence. So let me start by telling you a little bit who we are. For those of you that know us, this will be a refresher. For those who are new, I'm just going to quick tell you who we are in the community. Prepare and Prosper began in 1971 by a group of tax professionals who believe that access to quality tax assistance and financial services shouldn't depend on their ability to pay. So we were formed, we began providing free tax prep to low, moderate income individuals. Today we have blossomed, and now we run and promote programs and policies that foster more broadly financial health and wealth. So as you see here, what I think is most important to underscore is that our work is done by 515 community volunteers, from tax to financial coaching, et cetera. So we serve on average, to date, we've served 10,000. We serve 10 to 13,000 a year, returning 21 million in refunds across the Twin Cities. At the tax time money moment, we've been integrating savings, emergency savings, as Melissa alluded to, and 1.9 was saved so far by nearly 1,300 individuals. If only we could get everyone to save. And then we also have gone deeper in a volunteer-based financial coaching program, which is essentially pairing somebody with a financial champion to reach their financial goals. And of course, we advocate for tax credits and consumer protection at a local, state, and national level. And what I'm here today to really talk about is our newest initiative, and more external, called Financial Access in Reach. So I'm going to start by sharing a little context on the size and scale of what we call the financial inclusion gap in Minnesota. This data is the most recent, and it's actually, I should say, 2015 data from the FDIC survey on the and underbanked. And what that means is together called financially underserved. Unbanked is if you completely are disconnected from mainstream banking. So you're using non-bank services, check cashers, payday lenders, rent-to-own, prepaid cards. And underbanked individuals are those who are operating sort of in both worlds, in non-bank and bank sector. So you might have a savings account, but still be using money orders and check cashers for convenience and control. What this looks like in Minnesota, we have 416,000 households who are financially underserved in Minnesota, 60% of which are residing in the Twin Cities metro area. And then just breaking this out from 2013 to 2015, on a national level, the numbers of the financially underserved are staying flat. But in Minnesota and the Twin Cities, the data is showing a concerning trend that those who are disconnected from mainstream banking and the opportunities it allows for is increasing in our area. So, but there is an opportunity here, which I'm going to introduce FAIR. Before I go on, no surprise here, like our education gap, our health disparities, our disparities are stark in the financial inclusion space. Whereas 15% of communities, white communities, are un- and underbanked, compared to upwards of 50% for communities of color. What this means on an individual level is that individuals are spending, who are disconnected from banking, $1,000 to $2,400 a year on fees and interest operating outside of the mainstream. Can you imagine what we could do if we could turn some of that into emergency savings? So, FAIR. I'm going to introduce you to what is the FAIR financial solution. We set out by a couple community leaders who said, why aren't we doing anything addressing the financial inclusion gap? And today, fast forward, we have the FAIR financial solution. It is a bundled product model of 3 products you see here. I'm going to start you at the bottom. At the base product is a checking account, then a savings account for emergency savings, and a credit builder. So this together is the bundled FAIR financial solution. And we are partnering, as you see in the bottom right-hand corner, partnering with Sunrise Banks, they're a CDFI, they have a national charter, and they are a B Corp. So they are mission aligned and working with us to offer these products in the community. And it's more of a business to consumer, which is why FAIR comes in, is the FAIR brand. What I will say about these products overall is they are offered regardless of banking history. So say that somebody has overdrafted and had to walk away from banks, they can get an account, they can get a FAIR account, it's a second chance account, and it's offered regardless of credit history. So I want to just highlight that the credit builder is unique. It's an interplay between a loan and a CD. So a loan of $500 is locked into a CD, and the fair consumer makes low payments of about $30 a month, building credit and savings at the same time. Now, they are paying an 8% interest on a loan and an upfront fee, but that is a great way with guardrails to build or rebuild credit. All right, so that is the solution. Now I'm going to tell you what's different about it. The first of three core elements. The first core element is the distribution model of these products is unique, which is why I'm talking to you today. Of course, it's unique in that a nonprofit is partnering with a bank to source and offer products, but also that this is going to be taken into the community where people live, work, worship, and receive services. Because one thing we know is that there is real trust issues and sometimes even financial deserts in communities that are shut out. So the idea is that this is a remote distribution model brought into the community. We've been doing this for years and had great success at that tax time money moment, as I showed you, partnering with banks to enroll and offer products. So think of guided onboarding. In a way, it is a sort of remote digital banking model in that way. So let me tell you where you play into this, fair for employers. So what could this look like? There's a real spectrum of engagement here, from left being sort of the lowest lift to right being sort of the true integration. So ways you could embed these tools, these products into your workplace is as basic as providing information and education to employees. We've got a website, brochures, and we take requests on what other sorts of resources you want to create. Obviously, referral, you could have a deeper, more pipeline referral relationship where you're directly referring employees to FAIR, and we could do the follow-up and onboarding in that way. Sometimes it's really more powerful to bring people, come to the community. So you could host, train FAIR facilitators, us, where your employees work, at employee events, meetings, etc. And of course, the sort of last spectrum of engagement is integration. So that could mean integrating FAIR into onboarding and HR processes. So to say this is sort of like pay cards, but you get the dignity of a checking account with the added bonus of emergency savings and a credit builder tool. Okay, so I want to just talk about the last two features, core features, is that this is particularly for hourly workers, that these products, as you saw in the description of the products, we did deep consumer listening, not only in our own programs, but also externally. We listened to 150 consumers in building out everything from the brand to the actual products, fees, and features. So we built this hand in hand, and we structured these products to work in harmony with people's lives. We're talking about hourly workers. We know that a lot of bank accounts really require a stable, consistent income to avoid those monthly fees and minimum balance requirements. This is why there's no overdraft or minimum balance. This works with people and moves with their spikes and dips in income. And another thing I want to highlight before telling you our next timeline is not only will we set people up for success to use the accounts, we will message and help them after they enroll. So FAIR will stick with people to support them in a switch, because switching financial products comes with a lot of anxiety, particularly when you have a little float between your current bank account and the next bank account. And we're going to have people opt in to receive email, text, and one-on-one support to coach them through their financial journey, because really these products are an end to the financial goals of controlling spending, increasing savings, and building or rebuilding credit. So we're there with them not only at enrollment through guided onboarding, but then afterwards through tips, nudges, encouragement digitally. All right, FAIR timeline. Really exciting. We have tested this with 53 consumers who enrolled in 104 products, and we are about to pilot. We actually are going live on July 9th. We've been building with Sunrise Banks, building these products, and we're going to go live with 5 distribution partners who are going to reach 100 in this sort of first phase as we learn and build and tweak. And then come 2019, we're going to extend it beyond the Twin Cities across Minnesota to reach another 500 consumers with an eye towards national scale. And so that is the sort of flyover of FAIR. We just launched our FAIR website. So if you want to learn more, dig in, reach us, check out fairfinancial.org. And Melissa, back to you.
And we do have a question for you from Shauna.
Okay.
For the FAIR account, what about if someone has a check systems history for the bank account? Does that impact their ability to open it?
Shauna, that is a beautiful question, and that is this. We built this for that user. So if you have a check systems record, meaning for those of you that don't know check system is basically your credit report, but of your banking history, not your credit history. So all banks look at a check system when approving new account holders. So if you have a check system history of sort of negative account activity, you can get the FAIR accounts. You are eligible for this checking account. However, if you do have fraud, like account fraud, like check kiting, writing bad checks, that is still going to bar you from these accounts. But we will pull check systems reports for people who come to us.
Great. Thank you so much, Anne. I'd now like to open it up for any questions in general, either about the ordinance or if there's anything else. Oh, I have one more question that just came in from Tom. Can people use an ATM card with the FAIR account?
Yeah, Tom, yes, we have our own FAIR Sunrise co-branded debit card, and we are going to be encouraging through our nudges and support debit card use because it's safer and more secure, obviously, than carrying around cash. So the answer is yes.
Great. Thank you, Anne. Great. I have one other question that has come in from Joanna. She is saying that what she hears from her workers is that they can't possibly save because they're living paycheck to paycheck. And so she wonders if asking people to save at this moment is not realistic. That's a great question. What we have found in our work across the country is that in fact, if you ask it in the right ways and you say start small, start with micro savings. So we're not saying save the entire raise. We're saying save a small portion. That people see the advantage of that. They want to do this. This is not something you're making them do. Everyone wants to be able to save, and we're just saying that now that they have a little bit more income, they in fact might be able to. And what we have heard over and over again is that workers do want the opportunity and appreciate it when their employers help them to do this. Another question from Shauna for Anne. Do people need to engage into all three products of FAIR, or can they pick and choose?
Yeah, Shauna, that is, so it is an a la carte. People can choose just the credit builder or just the checking or get the whole bundle. So it is a la carte.
And Melissa asked, will that impact the monthly fee, the $3 a month fee?
That's a really good question. When we built this out and did consumer listening, we were talking about should there be a direct deposit minimum or a number of debit card swipes to waive the monthly fee? And our consumers said, just give me a flat fee. Give me a flat, predictable monthly fee. Don't make me do the mental math to get to free. And this is because people's income is volatile. So 1 month, why punish with a fee or when it's hard to do the mental math? So we heard that just people wanted a predictable, upfront, low monthly fee. So that does not go away with the number of products you enroll.
Great, thank you, Anne. Are there any other questions before we conclude this webinar? I'm a big believer in ending early if need be and giving everyone 10 minutes back in their lives. So I think with that, I will conclude. I would highly recommend that you look at the handouts, and here's our contact information. We will be sending out the PowerPoint as well as the recording of this very shortly. And please really feel free to reach out to any of us. We're here to help. And thank you all for listening. Have a great day.